Men's basketball drops a game to Texas Tech. Texas baseball rebounds. And Texas volleyball is here to take names. All this and more on College Press Box. Welcome into College Press Box. I'm your host, John Kelley, and we have a packed show for you tonight. Last Saturday, Texas Longhorns men's basketball dropped a 59-68 loss against the Texas Tech Red Raiders. It was a disappointing loss, considering their excellent performance against Kansas just a few days prior. Let's head to Lubbock for the highlights. In the first half, Jericho Sims laying up for a dunk. He gets it. Then we go on to see Kai Jones with another layup. And then Matt Coleman bringing the heat with his step-back three. And then Texas Tech with some action. With a nice mid-range shot from Kevin McCullough. And we see Matt Coleman at the end of the first half with a nice buzzer beater with the 3 points to take us into the half. So far, pretty close game. But then in the second half, we got Texas Tech, Tyreek Smith with a dunk on Texas. Excellent performance. And then Texas Tech gets the steal off of Texas to go down to score some points. Then we see Terrence Shannon Jr. with the fast break layup to get some points for Texas Tech. And then Kai Jones, with the dunk on Tech. And then another corner three by Andrew Jones. But it's not enough for Texas. Texas Tech wins 68-59. And now we're going to welcome in our basketball analyst, Henry Corwin. Henry, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, John.
So, Henry, obviously is a disappointing loss for Texas. What went wrong for Texas?
Yeah, I mean, they had a pretty okay first half. They were tied at the end of the half, but the second half just really, really poor shooting. They shot just 5 for 25 from the field in the second half, just 2 of 14 from 3 in the second half. Courtney Ramey had a pretty terrible game overall. He was just 1 of 10 field goal percentage. So the shooting was not that great. And then the scoring, I mean, there were only 2 players in double digits, just with 10 and 11 points. So they really did not have a lot of trouble putting the ball in the hole for the second half. And then their free throw shooting, 18 of 27. That's okay, but it's definitely not where you want to be. So just poor shooting from all parts of the court.
Yeah, it was definitely a disappointing performance in the second half. Disappointing overall by Texas. Disappointing loss. But who in your mind has been standing out on this Texas team and possibly has the ability to get a little bit of a turnaround for this Texas team?
So the 3 standout players in terms of scoring are the 3 guard/wings, where we got Andrew Jones, Courtney Ramey, and Matt Coleman. They're all juniors or seniors, so they've been on the team for a while, and they've kind of established themselves as the scorers on this team. I think in the last few games, Ramey has seemed to have been the go-to guy. Obviously did not have a great shooting night in the Texas Tech loss, but in games before that, against West Virginia, for example, he really went off. So I think he's kind of taken the challenge in the last few games as being the main go-to guy. Jones is actually leading the team in scoring. And Coleman actually shoots the highest percentage of those 3 by far. He shoots 47%. Ramey and Andrew Jones are both just at 40%. So I think that in the last few games, like I said, I think Ramey has kind of stepped up, but it's really been those 3 guys have been the go-tos with the experience they have for the Longhorns this year.
Those are definitely all experienced players, and we look to see what they're going to do in the future. Speaking of the future for this Texas Longhorns team, March Madness is just around the corner. What do you think Texas's chances are in the big tournament?
Well, based on the start that got off to, and obviously they had a terrific start. They're probably still locked to make the tournament. I would be very surprised if for some reason they found themselves on the outside looking in. But they need to clean up a lot of things if they want any chance to really make a run. Obviously, their consistency has been a big issue in terms of wins in general, but also in terms of scoring, in terms of team chemistry. Team chemistry is another issue that's kind of really been lacking the past few games. So they kind of just need to improve their consistency, and they need to play more connected, and they need to play with more confidence. They were playing with so much confidence at the beginning of the season, and their confidence has kind of dimmed a little bit the past few weeks with the losses they've had. I don't know if part of this is just the shadow of Longhorn sports kind of, getting in their head. We see that a lot with the football team. The basketball team historically hasn't had as high of expectations as the football team. But they kind of just need to continue to play with the confidence and know that, nothing is earned. They're not, forget the expectations. They still have to go out and prove it every night.
Well, hopefully Texas is able to make those changes and improve their performance, and maybe we'll see a big run in this tournament. Henry, thank you for coming on. Good as always to have you. When we come back, we'll talk Texas baseball. You won't want to miss it. Welcome back to College Press Box. I'm your host, John Kelley. This past weekend, Texas Longhorns took on BYU in a 4-game series, winning the first 3, but dropping the last one. Let's head on down to UFC Disch-Falk Field for the highlights. Down in the first inning, BYU had Cy Nielsen pitching, and Zach Zubia hit an inside the park home run. Number 52 has been struggling recently, but this performance definitely showed that he was doing well. Ty Madden was pitching for the Longhorns, and he got strikeout after strikeout after strikeout with a 1-2-3 inning. An excellent performance by Ty Madden overall, earning several strikeouts throughout the game. An excellent performance. Then Eric Kennedy on the mound hits the ball, and he's running, and he'll get a double for the Longhorns. Up next, Cam Williams with a ground rule double. Not too often you see that. Certainly exciting. Then Ivan Melendez with an RBI, and Cam Williams will score on that. Then with Ty Madden back on the mound, BYU only able to get a single off of that hit. Then Ty Madden gets the boot. Melendez singles, Trey Faltine scores, and Texas will win 11-1. And they'll go on to win the series 3-1. We now welcome in baseball analyst Jason Kinander to give us a more in-depth look at this 4-game series. Jason, welcome to College Press Box.
What's up, John? Good to see you. Thankful to be on.
So, with this three wins against BYU, especially after that rough start at the State Farm Showdown, is Texas back to being good?
Oh, I absolutely do think that the Longhorns are being good. They were dealt a very tumultuous opening 3-game slate as they faced off against, in order, the 7th-ranked team in the country, the 8th-ranked team in the country, and the 6th-ranked team in the country, and the Longhorns lost all 3. BYU isn't exactly the most daunting opponent, but the Longhorns getting the first 3 of the weekend 4-game set. The Longhorns are eventually going to need to be able to compete with teams at the level of the first 3 opponents if they want to be able to make a deep run as we get into the summer. But for right now, I don't think that it's a concern, especially considering how quickly the team rebounded against BYU.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Seeing how they rebounded against this BYU team, and seeing especially how the other Big 12 teams played at that State Farm Showdown, with the positive showing from Texas, could prove well against their play against the Big 12 going forward. But obviously, an important part of this game was some of the performances by the players. Who stood out to you the most in these wins?
Well, first and foremost, Ty Madden had an incredible game in the Saturday night showdown against BYU. The projected first-round pick in this summer's MLB draft had a 7-inning gem, allowing 1 hit, 1 walk, and striking out 11 in the win. In addition to Madden's great game, Cam Williams has had a red-hot opening week. He hit 3 home runs and drove in 8 while hitting at a .318 clip. So a couple of the Longhorn stars looking good, of course. Given that the season starts in February, it takes some players a little bit to get going, but Madden especially with an unbelievable showing on Saturday, and Williams holding his own in the lineup.
I definitely agree. I think that's definitely a testament to being able to practice, which they didn't with the snowstorm before the State Farm Showdown, but they had some time to prepare against BYU, and I think that definitely showed, and I definitely agree with your picks for the top players of this weekend. But as we said, this was a good turnaround for Texas baseball after those losses at the State Farm Showdown. Now with the 3 wins against BYU, what's next for this Longhorn team?
Well, their next 3 series are against fairly easy opponents. The Longhorns will face off against Texas A&M Corpus Christi, Houston, and Sam Houston State. So the next 3 series should be fairly easy for Texas, but the rest will not last long. The Longhorns next weekend will take on a college baseball powerhouse, that being South Carolina, in a 3-game home series. The stands should be about as packed as they possibly can be in Austin for the big showdown. So for the next week and a half, the Longhorns should do nothing but win games. Obviously, it's understandable to slip up in the last game of series against lesser opponents just because you're trying to get the bench players and sort of back-end rotation guys valuable innings and at-bats. But everything that happens in these next 3 series will lead into the big-time showdown against South Carolina next weekend in Austin. Can't wait.
Definitely can't wait, and we'll definitely be looking forward to it. Jason, thank you so much for coming on. And when we come back, we'll take a look at Texas Volleyball's spectacular return. You won't want to miss it. Welcome back to College Press Box. This weekend, we saw Texas Volleyball dominate Oklahoma 3-0. To give us more insight into Texas Volleyball going into the spring season, here's Cecilia Rodriguez.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me. It's March, and that means madness, but it's not only limited to basketball this time around, as Texas Longhorns Volleyball is gearing up for another run at a national title. Longhorns fans are wondering how the spring season is looking for Texas Volleyball coming off of a very long break. They've got nothing to worry about. Texas Volleyball came storming back into the spring season coming off a 15-week break this past weekend with 2 wins against Oklahoma. The number 2 ranked team and Big 12 champions kept their undefeated streak alive, proving that they are a national championship caliber team and are ready to take on this unusual spring season. The spring season is looking bright for Texas Volleyball as they move to 16-0 and remain undefeated in conference play. The long break in the middle of the season does not seem to have an effect on this volleyball team as they continue to push through this tumultuous season. Texas Volleyball has a real shot at the national title because they are one of the toughest and most athletic teams in this school's program or school history. Adding more to the record book, like 16-0 for the 3rd time in program history and going 444 days without a losing game. With key players like Jenna Gabriel, Asia O'Neal, Skylar Fields, Breon Butler, Molly Phillips, and Logan Eggleston consistently dominating this court, this team has a great shot. Junior outside hitter Logan Eggleston dominated the spring season opener, racking up 16 kills, 8 digs, 3 aces, and 1 block. However, freshman outside hitter Melanie Para is the player to watch this spring season. She racked up 10 kills and 1 block in her debut game as a Longhorn versus Oklahoma. Texas's biggest competitors this season are Wisconsin, Utah, and Nebraska. When it comes to Selection Day on April 3rd, we will see who gets the top slots. Wisconsin is currently 10-0 with key players like Dana Retke and freshman blocker Devin Robinson. Nebraska is currently 7-1 with key players like senior middle blocker Lauren Strivens and former Texas player outside hitter Lexi Sun. Utah is currently 8-1 with key players Danny Drews and Kenzie Kieber. However, Wisconsin and Kentucky are the only other two teams in the top 10 that are currently undefeated, meaning big competitors for Texas this season. Some sleeper teams to look out for this season as we head into play are Baylor, Kentucky, Minnesota, and Washington. And they're all looking to prove that they deserve a spot in the top 4 when it comes to April 3rd. However, for Texas, Baylor is the team to watch out for, as in this last fall season, they gave Texas a run for their money with back-to-back 5-set thrillers in November. So they could be a surprising team to look out for this spring. Overall, come April, we can see Texas Volleyball competing for another national title and hopefully bringing the championship trophy back to Austin.
Thank you, Cecilia. It'll certainly be interesting to see where Texas Volleyball goes this semester. When we come back, we'll be looking at how Longhorn sports have been doing around the 40 acres. You won't want to miss it. For the last time tonight, welcome back into College Press Box. This past weekend, Texas softball participated in the Lone Star Invitational and steamrolled the competition, beating Sam Houston State 9-3, Lamar 10-0, number 25 Mississippi State 8-7, UConn 16-2, and Ole Miss 5-2. Softball saw outstanding performances from several players, including Janae Jefferson, who has now gotten on base in 25 consecutive games, Mary Iacopo, who has hit hit home runs in 4 consecutive games, and Molly Jacobson, who threw a complete game against Ole Miss. The Longhorns will return to action Wednesday in Houston against the University of Houston Cougars. Women's basketball lost a heartbreaker on Saturday against OU down at the Irwin Center. The Longhorns fell in overtime 68-63. Charlie Collier was Texas's most effective player on the offensive end, scoring 23 points on 10 of 14 shooting and grabbing 7 rebounds. Audrey Warren scored 13 points, and Celeste Taylor and Alan Taylor both finished with 10 points. And the Longhorns' next matchup is tonight against the Baylor Bears. Now moving on to soccer. On Sunday, Texas soccer held an exhibition match against the Houston Dash. They lost 5-0. They recently announced their spring schedule, which in addition to this exhibition match, includes games against Texas State, Baylor, Texas A&M Corpus Christi, LSU, and Arkansas. Their next game will be on March 5th against Texas State. Now on to track and field, who this past weekend won their Big 12 titles for both men and women, with the men scoring a combined 141 points and the women scoring 154.5 points. This is the fourth straight time the Big 12 title this is the fourth straight Big 12 title for UT women and the first since 2017 for the men. The Longhorns are the first team to sweep the men's and women's Big 12 indoor title since 2015. There are outstanding performances on the women's side from Kennedy Flannel, Kavana Davis, Stacey Ann Williams, and on the men's side, Micah Harris, Yusuf Bismana, and Trip Perry. And it was announced today that former Longhorns head coach Tom Herman would be heading up to Chicago to join the Chicago Bears organization. His official title is as an offensive analyst. We all at TSTV Sports wish him all the best in his future endeavors. Now let's move on to this week in Longhorn sports. On Tuesday, men's basketball heads up to Ames to take on Iowa State at 6 p.m. You can catch that at ESPN+. And Texas baseball will face A&M Corpus Christi at 6:30, and that'll be on LHN. This Wednesday, softball heads down to Houston to play the Cougars at 6 p.m., and that'll be on the radio on 105.3 FM. Baseball will take on Texas State down in San Marcos at 6 p.m. And volleyball will play Baylor at 7 p.m. And you can catch that on LHN. On Thursday, women's tennis will head to San Antonio to play UTSA Roadrunners, and that'll be at 3 p.m. On Thursday, men's basketball heads up to Norman to take on the Sooners, and you can catch that at 8 p.m. on ESPN or ESPN2. This Friday, Texas soccer will play Texas State. You can catch that at 7 p.m. on LHN. Softball will be visiting Louisiana and the LSU Tigers at 7 p.m., and you can catch that on ESPN2. And on Sunday, men's tennis will be up in Norman, playing the Oklahoma Sooners at 12 p.m. Women's basketball will be up in Fort Worth, playing the Horned Frogs of TCU at 1 p.m. You can catch that on 105.3 FM. And men's basketball will also be up in Fort Worth, taking on the TCU Horned Frogs at 6 p.m. And you can catch that on ESPN+. Thank you so much for joining us this week on College Press Box. For everyone on our virtual mass control and in the studio, thank you for joining us.